Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. How did everything get so confused? In what few days Maria sat on a bench in the square, waiting for a cab, and looked longingly at the evening's still sky. That's where her friend who had invited her to that ill-fated wedding came up to her. Maria has not seen her for quite a long time, since she graduated from high school. "How are you doing?" asked Kelly, who had just witnessed and just out of the ordinary event. "I'm fine," Maria replied, barely moving her tongue. Weakness came over her in waves, and she felt like she was going to throw up again. "You're so green." Kelly looked at Maria with genuine sympathy. "Very upset. Should I call you an ambulance?" "No," Maria replied quietly. "No ambulance. I'll just sit here for a while. It'll pass. A cab will be here soon." She didn't know why she'd suddenly fallen for Kelly's invitation. She wasn't usually inclined to run to the first event she saw, but something made her do it this time. "You want to tell me?" A former classmate sat next to her and looked at Maria. "Why don't we go somewhere and sit down? Would it make you feel better to talk?" "I can't." "Really?" Maria said. "Thank you for your participation, but I'll be on my way. I think that's my cab." Kelly was the name of her high school classmate who didn't stand out in any way, didn't participate in any festivities. The boys didn't hear from her. They didn't gossip. In short, she was just an ordinary gray mouse, unlike Maria. She was always the star, and no informal school event was ever without her. Not that she was beautiful, not at all. The figure is good, and everything else is the result of a proper presentation of herself rather than natural data. But here is the character of the paper was iron fire, stubborn even from elementary school. She gave no one down, kicked at offenders like a kite. In the fifth enrolled in the section of karate and even achieved some success in this field. But she didn't go into professional sports, even though her coach urged her to. It was important for her to be able to defend herself. That's what she practiced for. At the same time, alas, spent the figure and grew a little. At first, she was a complete runaway. After ninth grade, she left school and went to culinary college. She always liked cooking, and her cherished dream was to open her own cafe and pastry shop. From the first grade, they all studied together, and children and friends. They had their own warm little group of people, which Kelly was not part of 8 people. 4 boys. 4. The girls, William Cars. Cavalier was the undoubted leader of this little community and the instigator of all sorts of procrastination. What a lot of things they did. It's funny to remember. Later in middle school, when the dreaded adolescence began, their company broke up for a while. Boys and girls socialized separately and exchanged caustic bards when they met. In high school, they had already separated into pairs, and Maria and William had progressed in their relationship. Farther than anyone else, they continued to date even after one crazy summer. Although William had moved on to another school and Maria was learning the culinary arts. But they still lived next to each other, and their feelings didn't cool down, and their interest wasn't lost, and the whole company didn't fall apart. They were still interested in each other. Once in college, where Maria also made new friends, there was an unpleasant incident with one of the girls. She got sick right in class. She sat all green, then fell, lost consciousness, and she was taken away. Soon after, she became famous. Rumor has it she had a clandestine abortion. Unsuccessful, as it happens in most cases, and the hospital barely got her out of there. After that, Maria had a lot to think about. She and William's close relationship could also have had unintended consequences. And then William surprised everyone, including Maria, by applying to an aviation school. There are only a handful of them in the country, and there are only 3 civil aviation schools. Surprisingly, with the frantic competition, he got in with a high passing score and was now preparing to go to the capital to study to be a pilot for long-distance and international flights. "I'll get settled there and pick you up," he promised Maria, who was walking around upset and anxious about his impending departure. "But where will we live?" she asked William. "Your flight dormitory is unlikely to accommodate a girl." "We'll see there," carelessly waved the guy away. "The main thing is to get hooked. The rest will come." And he left in the middle of summer. And Maria was left at a crossroads, whether to wait for him to call her to Washington or here, after college, to enter the university. She thought and thought, and then she came up with the usual, "Where are you on the practical side?" I decided to go with the second option. You can always transfer later. But how do you get a job in Washington without money and connections? She had no idea. You shouldn't have let him go. Maria was convinced by her friend Cindy. You've got to look after the boys. They'll have him on their hands in no time. So I'm supposed to chase him around like a glue stick? No, that's up to you, Cindy grimaced. I'm just warning you. True to her tactics. Second year, Cindy got pregnant and married her boyfriend Dan. She took a medical leave of absence and stayed home. Never even thought about studying. That's basically what she wanted. After having a baby, 2 years later, she had another, and completely calmed down. Her parents in the apartment bought and maintained a young couple, hoping that in the future a promising son-in-law. To gnaw the granite of science in the surgical department and prestigious medical faculty will pay them all their worries. Meanwhile, Maria entered the local university, where as mushrooms after rain opened more and more new faculties. One that suited her was food processing technology. William was still studying. He didn't forget about Maria. He wrote and came to visit. And she went to see him several times during vacations. Between sessions, he'd rent a cheap hotel for a couple of days. The two of them would walk around DC together. It was romantic. "Let's transfer here," he persuaded his beloved. "I'll transfer you, but you'll graduate in 2 years and go to God knows where." Maria answered him reasonably. "And then I'll have to transfer again." "No, let's finish our studies in peace, and then we'll see." William sighed and agreed. Maria was satisfied that there was no need to change anything. She kissed him tenderly. Trouble came unexpectedly during an exam flight. The training airplane William was flying had to make an emergency hard landing because of a technical malfunction. Fortunately, it was not a real disaster, but many of the cadets were seriously injured, including William, who suffered a severe fracture of his thigh leg. Months in hospital and several complicated operations were ahead in several places. His parents left immediately to see him, and a week later Maria, having passed her final exams at her university, was also in Washington. "Hi, sweetie." She kissed him gently on the cheek. "Hi." He tried to smile at her. "How are you?" "I did well on my exams, but how are you hurting?" She glanced at the stretch that was suspended by a leg in a cocoon of plaster bandages. "It's fine. Painkillers kicking in. Listen, Car, what's your favorite?" "Marry me." Suddenly, said William. "What's up?" Maria marveled. The timeliness of such a proposal. "Right here, from the registry office, will come to the sick. I'm sure the guys told me I don't want to be lying here. Did someone steal you away?" Stupidly, Maria laughed. "I thought I was a brainless cow to steal me away. Come on, don't make up ideas. Get well and heal, and I'll be here for you. As soon as you get well, we'll get married right away." He looked at her incredulously, as I decided that I would find a job here. She shook her head decisively, blowing off her forehead. The speech of her chestnuts their hair. "I'll rent something cheap to look after you. You don't mind, don't mind." He smiled affectionately at her. "It's about time. I've been calling you. So I'm here." Maria winked cheerfully at him. "And now I'm not going to leave you. Got it?" He only sighed contentedly and lightly shook her palm. "Girl, finish your visit." A strict nurse peeked through the door. "Only relatives are allowed in here. So this is my fiancé," William told her cheerfully. "The bride. Do you have a copy of the registry office statement?" The nurse asked in a businesslike manner. "Not yet." "Then we can't wrap it up, or we'll get in trouble." "Well, see you later." Maria gave William a quick kiss and left the room. She ran into his parents in the hallway. "Can I talk to you?" William's mother looked at her intently. "Of course," Maria nodded. "What was it you wanted?" You see, the lovely woman looked concernedly at her husband standing next to her. "We wanted to know what your intentions were." "What do you mean?" Maria didn't understand what they meant. "All right, let's tell it like it is," her husband intervened. "We just want to make sure that you, Maria, are serious about our son. He loves you. We've had our ears to the ground." The man smiled. "And if you're not going to reciprocate, he won't get over it." Maria looked at William's parents confused. "I love your son very much too, don't you? But you realize that he will take a very long time to recover, and the result of treatment is not guaranteed." "I understand that, and I'm not going to let him down. I assure you," Maria said seriously. "I'm moving here on purpose to be close to him and to help him as much as I can." "Sweet girl," Mother William is touched and hugged Maria. "Your father and I will definitely help you get settled. Won't we, dear?" "Of course. What are we talking about?" And the man approvingly stroked the girl on the shoulder. William's parents kept their promise through acquaintances and found Maria a wonderful apartment. The owners, who were on a long vacation abroad and agreed to create it only very decent and clean tenants of the apartment, was very close to the subway. In a large room, the owner's belongings were stacked in a locked room, and only the kitchen and a small bedroom were at their disposal. But that was good enough for her. She would only come here to sleep anyway. And then late at night, closer to bedtime, the only thing left was to find a job. But she had some money for the first time, and her parents had given some money, and William's parents had helped. She balked for a long time, didn't want to take it, but his father said, "Take it, daughter. We're family now, and we have to help each other. William will get well, and we'll have a great wedding." Maria almost cried with emotion and had to accept the money. "Darling, please pass me a napkin," William asked her. "Here, of course. Here you go." And she helped him to wipe his face and hands, one of which was badly bruised, and was still not obeying very well. "You know, Maria, you and I are going to make a great family," William said warmly. "I'll be working, earning my flying hours. You'll be a comfortable housekeeper. We'll have 3 children, 3 pretend children." Maria was horrified, but her heart twinged. Where was he scattering to? "But yes, quite seriously," continued William. "Benefits for large families and all that social support. Then I'll start flying abroad. I'll bring you all the best, and you will be my reliable rear guard." He smiled. Maria squinted. "Ah, so you think I've worked so many years in college and uni to just sit at home, wiping noses of snotty kids all my life? No, I'm going to work too, and I'm going to take it easy." He laughed, as if he didn't even notice her, not hiding my indignation. "Provide me with 2 sons and a light bulb, a daughter, and working for health. Yes, then you'll work just fine." Angry, I thought. But she didn't answer him. "I'll have time to talk about something else beforehand." "That?" A thin girl's voice voiced its presence, and on the threshold of the room appeared unearthly beauty of the creation of a fragile girl with huge, like a dragonfly, eyes. She also had bright blue eyes. Maria darted out in amazement at this unexpected guest in an instant, paying absolutely no attention to Maria. Surely she was not here at all. She flashed easily to William on the bed, gracefully perched herself near his shoulder, and imprinted a luscious kiss on his face, somewhere even close to his lips. In an instant once more she stretched out. There was a nasty whisper. "How are you doing, darling?" "Nothing," muttered the guy, unsuccessfully, trying to crawl at least a little away from the dragonfly. "I'm lying down. By the way, please meet Nancy, my fiancée, Maria." Nancy returned as swiftly as if she'd been told there was a rattlesnake coiled up behind her, ready to leap. The bride Maria had no time to say anything. She had just opened her mouth, but this perky girl was already sprinkled with words like a bride. "You've been hiding from us all this time, William. That you have a fiancée. Where did she come from?" "You mean you?" And Nancy gestured angrily at Maria with a slender finger with a sharp birch polka dot. Denver, Houston, Detroit. So what's going on here? Maria finally managed to squeeze herself out. Who are you exactly? Aya? The dragonfly marveled. I'm William's classmate. The head of the class is his best friend. Oh, stretched Maria. Really? Mash, Nastya, girls, pitifully said William. What are you really? Not paying the slightest attention to his words, Nancy continued to advance. So he hid, yes, hid his private life from the public. Thought, I guess we'd be done by now, and you'd get married on the sly. Go back to your place in San Antonio. What's her geography problem? Already unable to contain her laughter, Maria thought to herself in San Antonio. Nancy continued, and that's it. No, darling, no, we all are. All of us, you hear. We should get acquainted. What are you talking about? For God's sake. Tiredly asked Maria. What do you mean? About what? The dragonfly shrieked again. I mean about our group. We are the best group, even 2 pilots and a flight attendant. We won the Student Council Grand Prix. We won. We have to know everything about each other. Otherwise, what sense of cohesion would there be? Anyway, let's go to our place now. And she firmly took Maria under her arm. Come on, everybody, you can tell us everything. When is the wedding? How many guests are you going to invite? Don't forget us too. We want to distribute after the end of flight practice. That's it. Maria couldn't take it anymore. That's enough. First of all, I'm not going anywhere with you. I've got to be here for an hour before Mom William takes over. Second of all, what the hell is a sense of cohesion? He's got a lot of healing to do. Nancy's a little down. Well, we wanted to help him recover quickly so he could rest. Almost forcibly pushed that dragonfly out into the hallway. I'm sorry, but there are only certain hours of visitation. Only relatives are allowed in at all times. How did you get in, by the way? I said I was a sister, Nancy answered proudly. And it's true. We're all like family. Maria didn't say anything, just shook her head and closed the door to the room tightly. What was that? Stunned. Maturity she on William he provided, waved a hand. This is our activist Nancy. You'll have to forgive her. She's a bit of a handful. She's going to be a stewardess, Maria asked, still stunned by this strange and violent invasion. Yes, nodded William. It's coming soon, Mom dear. Hold on, passengers. Maria laughed nervously. I don't know what's worst, to crash or to spend a few hours in society. That's what it was. Don't. Suddenly William asked quietly. About the crash. Oh, I'm sorry. Maria caught on. I'm sorry, please. Stupid. I wasn't thinking. As expected, the treatment and subsequent rehabilitation lasted almost a year and a half. All this time, Maria was with me, sitting in the hospital, helping me to get up, walk, do therapeutic gymnastics. In addition, she got a job. She worked shifts in a confectionery shop, first as an apprentice, then as a confectioner's assistant. Worked well, was neat, attentive, clean, followed all the necessary recipes and never lazy anything, then earned herself a good reputation and an invitation to the position of senior pastry chef in another institution of the same chain. Maria said she would think about it. The deadline was approaching for William to have the last of the spokes, stretches removed. Now it was necessary to relearn how to walk at home. At the extended family council, it was decided to stay here in Washington, and there were more prospects. And there were good specialists who had already been contacted. They're all here. It took another 6 months to finally adjust to the former normal life. It required all the resources, both material and, most importantly, human. That's why Maria's position had to be given up. Then William went to finish his studies. He still had a few exams to pass, and he finally received the coveted diploma and the necessary medical authorization to start flying independently. He could breathe easy and think about his own career. A few days after the discharge, William invited Maria to a restaurant. On Friday, it will be you and me and my parents for a family get-together. We'll celebrate my recovery. And William kissed his selfless bride tenderly. Maria guessed that the family dinner would be about their upcoming wedding, and she didn't really feel like going. She loved William, of course, and wanted to marry him. But what she needed most right now was a break from everything, even the company of her lover, to whom she had given so much of her time and energy. Knowing William's moods, it could be assumed that he would be enthusiastic about arranging their life together and would insist that they should have children as soon as possible. She had nothing against children either, but a little later. First, they should stand firmly on their feet, achieve something in their profession. Then they could think about children. Maria spent the 2 days before Friday working. She had long wanted to try one recipe that was not in the pastry shop's arsenal. One special cake, airy, very tasty, and not at all colorful. Maria was sure that more and more people were looking after their health, watching their diet and counting their calorie intake. She set to work with a joy she hadn't felt in a long time. She was completely free. She no longer needed to rush to finish her work on time and faster. Running to the hospital, she could take her time to prepare all the necessary ingredients, accurately marking them on the special pastry scales. "What is it?" She turned to the girl assistant. "Are these buckets? This is dry sand. Please bring a couple of oranges. We'll do it with you in a minute." The fresh-faced girl brightened up and took them to the storeroom. Soon the whole shop gathered to watch Maria conjure up her cake. There was no other way to call the process. It was worth it just to watch her mix, pretty, fry. It's a process that comes alive and knocks you over. How her eyes burn. How the work argues in those skillful hands. Now need to put the first batch of cream frosting in the fridge until tomorrow to make sure it came out just right. I'm gonna go order some jail-broiled cherries and roasted almonds. And Maria left the shop to take a little break with a cup of coffee and to calculate tomorrow's recipe at the same time. She returned home that evening quite late, but quite happy and could not sleep, going over in her mind everything that has already been done and still needs to be done tomorrow. The next day, the cake machine was completely assembled and even 2 cakes were ready. Another one exactly like the first one, but smaller. Maria made one for the pastry shop staff to try out. "My God, it's a delight. It's delicious, Maria. You're a culinary fairy." There was no end to the excitement of the coworkers. Everyone came to the table, tasting, marveling, taking more. "But what do we have here that's sure and solid cotton candy?" A slightly hoarse voice created at the entrance to the shop made everyone present stumble chief. The chief came. A light stream of a wave ran throughout the confectionery, immediately reached the farthest corners. "So did a little birdie text us that you're having a tasting here today? Or was it the little river that got it wrong?" "No, it wasn't," Maria answered boldly, looking directly into the face of an elderly, imposing gentleman who stood in front of the audience, leaning on a long cane. "Please socialize." The gentleman's face expressed nothing. It was like a fearless mask. Maria froze in anticipation. What was she? The whole shop froze, staring intensely. "What will the chief say?" He repeated, slowly, wiping a napkin with a dessert point and carefully putting it aside on a saucer. "I never thought I would find a real diamond here. Unlimited, though, but it's fixable." He scrutinized her face with his stern eyes. "Would you mind meeting me?" "Madam, say tomorrow around 8 p.m. "Of course." Maria smiled demurely with pleasure. "Good," he nodded, snapped his fingers in someone's direction, and pulled out his cane. Walked out of the workshop. Immediately, a young guy jumped up to Maria, slipped her a business card. "Antonio is the chef of the Lemon restaurant chain. Full member of the Milanese Academy of Culinary Excellence." Maria's got her lucky ticket. A pat on the shoulder from a coworker. "That's Churchy himself. How did he even know about your cake?" "No, you don't think I'm jealous, do you? Cakes are amazing, really, Maria. But how did I tell them?" The pastry chef calmly remarked, I've had my eye on Maria for a long time. She's very capable. But before, it was as if something prevented her, let's say, to reveal her potential. But now I wish her luck." And he smiled cheerfully. The cake is a masterpiece. Maria listened to them in silence, and happiness overwhelmed her to the brim. She had never imagined that her joy, her favorite business, would give her such a surprise. Few of the employees of the pastry shops that make up the holding Lee Montella's establishment had even had the honor of seeing the chef himself with his own eyes, let alone have him notice you and invite you to a meeting. It was something to be proud of. Definitely. However, Maria did not believe the nose can be cut into small squares, can be taken to the hall for free tasting, and the big one will be put in the showcase and sold by the piece. Of course. The manager agreed enthusiastically. That's what we'll do. By the way, Maria, what did you name your cake? What to write on the card? I would call it a vocation, modestly lowered her eyes, said Maria. I can do that. What do you say? The manager bowed to her gallantly. I hope you will immediately inform us about the results of your interview with the chief, Maria assured him. It was only when she got home that she remembered that dinner with William's parents was scheduled for the same time. On Friday morning, Maria was immersed in preparations for the upcoming meeting. 2 meetings even. Although, of course, the one that was to take place in the main restaurant of the holding company, or Marcello's, came first. She had to look her best, and she tried to do it well in advance. Signed up for a manicure by a cosmetologist and a hairdresser. She felt a little sorry for the money she had to pay for all these procedures. She had never allowed herself to do that before, saving on everything so she could rent an apartment and save something. Her dream of owning her own pastry shop still hadn't left her. But come on, she decided to herself. It's like meeting people by their clothes anyway. How will I feel if I showed up at such a fancy place in my usual form, like a gray mouse? Maria was actually wrong about herself. There was no way she could be called a gray mouse. Excellent athletic figure, thick brown hair, attentive brown eyes, and a lower even tone. Velvet clear skin made her, if not a stunning beauty, then certainly not a mouse in any way. Lips could have been bigger, she pondered, looking at herself in the mirror, and her cheekbones left a lot to be desired. Well, the main thing for her was to look well-groomed, and success in her work can be achieved with any appearance. It's all about talent and perseverance. She seems fine with the former. She's got a lot of the latter. That's for sure. With that, she left the house and went to her destination. First thing she did was get her nails done. That took an hour and a half. Then the hairdresser's, where her unruly curls were arranged in a beautiful high hairstyle. And finally, the beauty parlor. The reflection that she saw in the mirror after all the procedures were over amazed Maria incredibly. Looked at her, a complete stranger, to her surprisingly beautiful young lady with skillfully drawn eyes, in which trembled the mysterious flickering light. What am I? She marveled. But how are the lips? They are a completely different shape. Well, and most importantly, correctly applied makeup makes a woman a beauty. The master laughed. But you cannot forget about the routine procedures. Come to me regularly, and you'll always look like a Vogue cover model. Regularly is unlikely to work, sighed Maria. But I won't forget you. Now all that was left was to buy the dress. This was the last expense, and a very significant one. The thing is that Maria realized that you cannot come to such meetings in anything. Therefore, on the advice of colleagues, she reviewed several outfits in one brand boutique. But that day she did not take them at once. Girls from this salon told her that it would be better to come on the eve of the meeting with hair and makeup, try on several options, and stop at the one that would suit her best. In the end, Maria, with the help of consultants, chose a laconic, delicate olive dress. At first glance, very simple, but impeccably modest, perfectly sitting on her slender figure. The saleswoman began to offer her different brooches, necklaces, handbags, and other accessories. But Maria would not take anything except a small silk handkerchief, emerald with brown, with close cucumbers, a lovely choice, sincerely approved one of the saleswomen. It is immediately obvious that you have impeccable taste and purse, hummed Maria. There was no money left for anything else anyway. It's okay. I'm sure you'll make a lasting impression on your business partner in that dress. And we'll see you again, I hope. Thank you very much. And Maria's in a great mood. Despite her emptied purse, she left the boutique. There was still plenty of time to meet her fate before evening, so she decided to rest a bit. It was very rare for her to get an opportunity like this. When she returned home, she lay down on the sofa, careful not to damage her hair, and immediately fell into a pleasantly relaxing sleep. Before the meeting, she corrected her makeup just a little, looked in the mirror, and was completely satisfied with the result. Good evening, mademoiselle. Did you make a reservation? I have an appointment with Mr. Archie. Oh, of course, to lie. No one here bowed to her obligingly. Please, come this way. I'll escort you to your seat now. Maria was led through the halls of a fancy restaurant and led her down some corridors of offices. She was disappointed, thinking she'd meet the chief in his office somewhere in the office section of the building. But the boy escort ducked in, pushed open an inconspicuous door, and they found themselves in a courtyard. It was a place of breathtaking beauty from every angle, surrounded by the restaurant building. This patio was a regular square around the perimeter, densely planted with evenly trimmed wifes, bushes. In the center rose a large tree of its crown, forming a kind of roof. Round oval tables were placed everywhere. A maximum of 6 people were seated. Not loud, pleasant music sounded, and at the far end murmured a small garden fountain, flowing fury into a deep marble bowl. The entire crown of the big roof tree was festooned with garlands and tiny golden lights, and changed clothes, like carefree moths flitting about, attracted seductively by the odors of haute cuisine. Good evening, Chief, despite his status gallantly, rose from his seat and, greeting Maria, kissed her hand. You are marvelously good tonight in the Cindy household, Maria. Thank you. Maria was embarrassed, and a bright blush flooded her face. Dinner was delicious, and Antonio, as he allowed himself to be called, didn't talk business while eating. It's bad form to discuss business over a meal, he said. Good cooked food. One must take credit for it, and let the world wait. In about 15 minutes, they were laughing and chatting like good buddies, and Antonio told her how he himself had started out as a professional. I was a simple boy from a large and friendly, but very poor family. When at the age of 8, I got a job as an errand boy in an Italian inn. How many years have passed? And I still fondly remember that very first job. He took out a thick cigar and lit it. Let the flavor rings and the aroma be blamed. The smoke was not smokable. Maria smelled a pleasant odor and was surprised. Usually she could not tolerate tobacco, but this enchanting aroma was very special. Your cigarettes are beautiful. Involuntarily, she praised the chief's smoke. He was very excited. In turn, noted that she had excellent taste and began to tell her about different kinds of tobacco and other details. Maria felt that he had ridden his favorite horse and furtively looked at the time on her phone. The meeting with William and his parents had been pushed back an hour to 9 p.m., and now it was past 10. Cindy's in a hurry, the chief asked, glancing at her gesture. No, she wasn't, was she? She assured him, not wanting to rush him in any way. However, he understood everything and, as a polite man, got down to business. He began by putting away his cigar. I must confess that I admire your abilities. Your manager told me about you several times when we met and the other day, when you somewhat ambitiously, I admit, decided to try your hand with this complex cake. I stopped by on purpose to see what would come of it. I must say you exceeded my expectations, and I was a little surprised. A dessert of this caliber is only served by an experienced master of haute cuisine. And I'm sorry, but with all due respect, you are not yet in that privileged caste. Maria nodded. I understand. So he looked at her thoughtfully. Taking into account all these circumstances, I decided to offer you the following. Our holding will pay for you to study at the Milan School of Higher Culinary Arts. And after that, if you successfully master the course program, internship in one of the Italian institutions of the holding. Then, based on the results of your training, we will see what position we can offer you on a permanent basis. What would you say to that? Are you ready to move? Maria looked at Antonio with delight. Surely such offers are too good to refuse. All I aspire to is to become excellent at what I do. And you're offering me practically the keys to the coveted door. The magical world of the culinary arts, I see. My offer hit the mark. Antonio smiled contentedly. Okay, so we've agreed on the details. We will know you later, dear Maria. And now you can already run to a date with your young man. And he gave her a friendly wink. But how do you know? Maria looked at the man perplexed. It's quite simple. Antonio laughed. It is unlikely that you have received another equally generous job offer. So that leaves only a romantic date. I hope it's the only one that won't interfere with our arrangement. Absolutely not. Maria assured him and left the magic courtyard completely happy. I have to run to the restroom for a minute. It'll connect. Look at yourself in the mirror and take a breath. Now you can run and catch a cab and go somewhere else. To meet the groom and his parents, I apologize, out of breath. Maria literally flew to the restaurant table where William and his father and mother had been waiting for half an hour. I was really delayed at work. She prayerfully folded her arms, pressed the check. The chief of the whole holding company himself. It was impossible to leave. Nothing, we understand. Father William nodded graciously. We've started on the drinks and appetizers for now. That's fine. William himself was less complacent and looked at Maria incredulously. However, I was over the moon to see that I didn't notice anything. With great pleasure, I started to drink, just like everyone else. The wine was very tasty, and she tasted it properly without denying herself anything. Soon, the general tension of the long wait was broken by a good drink, appetizer, and her future relatives smiled and relaxed. Maria William made a sign to the waiter, and he brought a clean flute and a bottle of good champagne. When the glasses were filled, I want to propose to you. He blurted out and raised his glass. Maria, you have always been there for me, supporting me and helping me. You spared neither time nor effort. I love you and I want you to become my wife. What do you say? He looked at the girl. She was silent and smiled, turning her glass. Ah, yes, he slapped himself on the forehead. What an idiot, I'd completely forgotten. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a red heart-shaped box. William opened the box and held it out to Maria. It contained a beautiful gold ring with 3 shiny stones. Maria was not good with jewelry. Perhaps they were even diamonds. What beauty! She admired it simply adorably. Well, what do you say, my dear? Softly inquired William's mother. I agree. Maria nodded her head. We'll be officially engaged. I'm not talking about an engagement, William said. I'm talking about a wedding. A wedding? Maria was surprised. But I think there's so much to arrange before the wedding. Everything is already arranged. Her potential mother-in-law smiled again. My aunt passed away recently. She left me an apartment here in Washington. I'll give it to you for the wedding. Wu shook her head a little too generously. Maria, don't be. Come on, sweetheart. William interrupted her. It's already decided. All right. Maria decided not to escalate things now and to talk to William about everything later in private. Let's drink to the health of this beautiful couple. Again, the glass was reminded by the father. Happiness to you, children. It was well past midnight when Maria crossed the threshold of her apartment again. She felt so tired. So much had happened in one day. The next early morning, she was already in the pastry shop because the day before she had switched shifts with a friend. And now she had to work her shift. Maria was glad of that, though, doing what she loved. What could be better? But how? Of course, that was the first question that greeted her coworkers. How did it go well? Evasively, Maria answered them. No one here to make a particularly close relationship with the exception of one girl who was not here today. It was with her that she switched shifts. I've been offered to continue my studies. They say I know too little yet." She was joking around until the manager showed up. He entered the workshop. "Congratulations," and handed her a small bouquet of pretty lilies of the valley. "I won't forget. Our Maria will soon leave for a higher culinary course in Milan." He turned to everyone present. "Let's give her a round of applause. What a class. That's great. Well done, Maria. We're very happy for you." There were cheers from the colleagues. "Yes, the chef himself praised her last dessert," said the manager with a smile. Besides, after the tasting, the whole big cake was sold out in 5 minutes, and there were several repeat orders. "How many total?" he asked the manager of the pastry shop. "There are now 8 cakes. By different deadlines," the one answered. "About spring into the order book." Here, the manager smiled contentedly. "Take an example. Come on, car, before she leaves. Pass on the experience, teach the girls how to master this cake. One seems to have ordered tiered ones for a wedding. Isn't that right?" "Yes." The manager had a big smile. "Very expensive. It's beautiful when you go away." "I don't know exactly yet," replied Maria. "The chief said to let me know. But great. Good luck." "Oh, Maria." The girls gathered around. "You're so good. You're going to Italy. I can't believe it. Don't forget about us there. How will you get back?" "You'll probably get a job as a manager at one of the restaurants. So to put in a good word for us later," Maria assured all of us. "Now let's get to work." At lunchtime, she sat down at the food table and called Kelly. "Oh, you're so good," the longtime friend said admiringly when she heard the latest news. "How did you decide to get married and go to Milan together?" "But William, where to work there?" "I don't know about the wedding. I don't think I need it right now." "Then you have to choose what's more important to you, William or your career," said Cindy with conviction. "He's definitely in the mood for marriage. Not only him, but also his ancestors," Maria shared with her friend. "Can you imagine a guy proposing in front of mom and dad?" Yeah. The 4 of us were at a restaurant last night. I don't know. I think it's a little over the top. It should be a romantic evening, in my opinion, not an extended family council meeting. What do you think?" "William's always been very serious," Cindy sighed. "He wasn't exactly the romantic type. But on the other hand, he wanted to show you that he was serious. It seems to me that if you marry him, you'll be like a stone wall." That's exactly what Maria said. "He'll put me behind a stone wall, and I'll sit there. I'll have kids. I'm sorry. Goodbye, career." "That's for sure." Cindy laughed. "That's how I sit. Although unlike you, I never wanted to make a career. We have a career man now. He's never home. He's on call. He's in surgery. He's a great surgeon, of course. But there's got to be a limit to everything. I'm not complaining, though. You know, everyone chooses what's best for themselves. I've taken up knitting. I'll send you pictures." "Come on," Maria said. "Good for you, and I'm happy for you. And you know, dear, not giving up my dream, even for the sake of peace behind a stone wall. I knew you would understand me." "Touched," said Maria. "You know, I'd like to see you before I leave. I'm planning on coming home for a while. If I can see my parents and stop by." "Okay, I'd love that." And the friends said goodbye, as if listening to this conversation. William offered Maria a romantic weekend trip. She agreed, expecting that there they would talk about everything and decide how to proceed. The next weekend, they found themselves in a hotel located on the shore of a picturesque lake, surrounded by forest. In the restaurant, a table was already waiting for them, set up in a cozy corner away from prying eyes. Buckets of ice, cool champagne, open windows launched a warm spring evening. So the birds sang, so nice and peaceful all around. William, handsome, imposing in a suit and white on the roof of a small shirt, was so kind and gentle that Maria, for a few hours, decided to forget about all the difficulties and just enjoy the moment this beautiful. In the evening, they no longer talked about anything else. They did not discuss the upcoming wedding or the planned car. the departure to Milan. They were just together and happy. As for Maria personally, it was as if she had gone back in time a few years when they were high school students, just beginning to get acquainted with adult life, but not yet burdened with adult problems and complexities. The conversation she had put off for so long didn't take place until just before they left the hotel. After breakfast, they went for a walk to the lake, and Maria told William about the proposal Antonio had made to her. "You realize that you can't refuse something like this?" she asked her fiancé. "Yes," he nodded. "But I also realize that if you accept this tempting offer, then our marriage could be put on the back burner." "Why do you say that?" She looked at William in surprise. "I'll finish the course, do my internship, and come back to you. Do you really think I'm going there to have fun?" "You might not think that now, do you?" William said glumly. "But it's Italy. There are 1,000,000 temptations. So you don't trust me," Maria clarified. "I do trust you," he answered irritably, "but everyone else doesn't. I would prefer you to be my wife and be by my side where I can stand up for you. Or rather, control me calmly," said Maria, calling things by their names. "Ah, so," he looked at her already angrily. "What else do you think I call you wrong?" "Calm down," William said Maria tiredly. "All I'm saying is that I, too, need time to arrange my life as I deserve it. When you needed help, I gave you everything I could. My care, my time, my strength. And I ask you to just wait a little while and trust me. I love you very much and I want to be your wife. But first, give me a chance to realize my potential, to achieve something. Is that so much to ask? Do as you please. I'm not refusing my offer, and I'm not giving up on you. I hope you'll return the favor." "Of course." Dear Maria smiled happily at him. "You can count on me completely." Antonio said that the training will not take more than 6 months. "After all, I already have a specialized higher education, and then an internship for 3 months. See, it's not that long." "Well," grudgingly, William muttered, "when do you have to leave?" "Probably in 2 months. 25. First of all, I have to get a passport, a visa, and the new enrollment for the course will be only at the end of July." So I was told while Maria was engaged in training camp and preparation for the trip. William was going to the training camp for a training camp before the start of independent flights. The training camp was to last almost 2 months. Completed a week before your departure, she was fully immersed in current concerns. She didn't forget about work either. In the first few weeks, William called her, wrote her. But then, apparently, they were so loaded with training that the messages began to come less and less often, and the calls stopped altogether. Maria wrote to him several times, dialed his number, but he did not call her back. Only later he would sign off, saying that he had come back from flying very late. Tired. "I'm sorry, it's all right, loved ones." She wrote to him, "The main thing is to take care of your health. Don't strain yourself. I understand." Kisses, hugs, love. In her spare time, she studied detailed recipes for Italian dishes from textbooks. What did Antonio bring her? "Whoever works hard will achieve a lot," he admonished his protege. "I wish you luck and hope that B will live up to my expectations, Maria." And she tried. She tried her best. She even dreamed of recipes. An unexpected call with a wedding invitation from an old friend took her by surprise. "You're getting married." Maria was surprised. She was doubly surprised at the upcoming wedding and at the fact that this girl remembered her, even though they had not spoken for a long time. "No," she laughed at the marriage. "A close friend of mine is coming out. She is a very sociable person, and the soul of any company asked me to invite as many friends and acquaintances as possible. She wants the wedding to be lavish and numerous. It probably sounds very strange, but you know, everyone has their quirks. She herself grew up in a broken and not particularly well-off family. She doesn't have many relatives or close friends. Can you keep her company and be a good person?" "I don't know." Maria thought about it. "As it is too unexpectedly invited to someone else's wedding, where you don't even know anyone." "So what?" laughed her friend. "But free food and drink. And the place is beautiful. Heard about the club on the waterfront? It's cool. And then at least we'll get to see each other." Molly and Jenna Holly, remember her? Yeah, of course. Maria smiled involuntarily. You know, I think I'm probably not gonna say no. It suddenly seemed like a good idea for her to get away for a while. After all, no one would expect anything from her there, and it would be possible to just have a good time. On the appointed day, she hailed a cab and dressed up and drove to the place where the marriage was to be solemnized. There was already a noisy, dressed-up crowd of guests outside the building who had come to meet the young people. They were expected to arrive any minute. Maria chatted with old acquaintances, discussed with the girls the outfits for the upcoming ceremony. But the wedding cortege was still missing. Traffic was backed up. What can I do? We're even late for the wedding. The guests don't know where to put themselves. Maria stood a little longer and decided to walk to the nearest grocery store to buy some water. It was hot. There was nothing to freshen up with. For now, it would be cold champagne. Taking a bottle of soda from the refrigerator, she sat for a while on a bench in the nearest public garden. Calculated that if even a solemn meeting will take place without her, it's no big deal. Returning with relief, she saw that the guests had already disappeared, so the newlyweds had arrived. And they'd all gone inside. So she went and asked at the entrance where the waiting room was and went there. There was a general excitement in the big room. Ladies were fixing their hair, fidgeting around the big mirror, taking pictures. Men bored with the view were leaning back and forth, waiting for all of them to be invited to the festive part. Finally, Maria sat down on the couch, a firm decision not to get out of her seat until the registration began. And those in the front rows were not the ones who needed her there, and she didn't particularly care for those unfamiliar marriages. Oh, Maria. She was approached by the very friend who called her to the event. "I wondered where you'd gone." "I went to get some water." "You've already seen the newlyweds, such a beautiful couple." "My friend got herself a husband like that. He's beautiful." And Kelly rolled her eyes, acting all excited. "Let's go," she realized. "They're inviting us." Maria got up reluctantly, already reproaching herself for agreeing to come here. It would be better to sit quietly at home on her day off, studying recipes. She could have gone to the park, just get some sleep. You're out here with a bunch of strangers, she thought. But there was nothing to do. She had to drag herself to the registration hall. She went in the last rows, as she was going to do, and stood modestly behind the backs of those ahead of her. She didn't have much of a view of the happy couple, especially so far standing with their backs to her. And so the registration began, and the strict woman asked those present for silence, dear newlyweds, parents, relatives, friends, and guests of the ceremony. Solemnly, she pronounced a memorized phrase. Maria almost did not listen, and even sat down on a chair. There was a row of chairs in the back, apparently, especially for elderly guests. The registrar kept muttering something. Then the music played. Then the young people were invited to come up and sign in the book. Maria could not see all this, but suddenly she was almost asleep, and in the stuffiness of the solemn wedding hall caught something familiar. Maria was alert and listened. And after the registration, we congratulate the newly created young family, William and Nancy. Hooray for the newlyweds. Hooray. Hooray. Bitterly shouted all present. Maria got up from her table as if in a dream, and on unruly legs, she leaned forward, looking through the backs of the guests into the faces of the bride and groom. She was also a little nearsighted, but having approached almost to the first rows, left the last faint doubts. No matter how unbelievable, unthinkable, horrible, monstrous it seemed to her, but right in front of her at a distance of 2 meters stood her William. And next to him was that perky Nancy. That brazen, reckless girl who had barged into William's room when he was still in the hospital. At her parents, William, Maria, still not believing herself, clamped her eyes tightly shut and shook her head to ward off this deranged hallucination. But when she looked at the young ones again, everything was the same. Here was Nancy. Here is William, her fiancé William, whom she has been dating since high school. William, her favorite, who a month and a half ago had asked her to marry him and swore eternal love. Traitor, Maria thought in her heart, turning to walk out of here, before this whole monstrous phantasmagoria went too far. And suddenly, the rogue waited behind his back, a sharp female exclamation from the rogue. "What are you looking at, William? It's a crook." Poor Maria, without turning around, tried to break through the crowd to get away. Yes, she would have fallen to the ground to avoid being a laughingstock. But it seemed her treacherous fate had prepared this monstrous scenario in advance, and the worst was yet to come. She was sharply grabbed by her shoulder by tenacious paws with thin, like birds of prey and strong fingers. "Maria, where are you going? Since you came to congratulate us, it's rude to run away like that." Maria counted to herself to 3 and took a deep breath, turned right in front of her nose, smiling with the predatory grin of a satisfied dragon Nancy, and not ceasing to fountain words. "Look at that. William, come here, darling. Look, it's your Maria. Your ex-fiancé has come to congratulate us. Mom, Dad, come here. She's the one who called William's parents. We're all civilized people. How good of you, Maria, to come. What dedication, what stamina, what high mental organization. Look at all this, Maria. She's William's ex-fiancé." But Nancy's as loud as she could, to reach as many listeners as possible. "Lovely girl. So much for our William man, Nina. Kevin, Peter, come quickly to our room. I'll introduce you. You know, darling," she took Maria under her arm, "we have to get to know you properly. You know, you've been driving since you were a kid, really, since high school. How wonderful. You'll tell me all his little secrets, all the secrets from a man's past so hidden." And she giggled happily. "But now that he and I have become husband and wife, there must be no secrets between us, no understatements. You understand?" Maria nodded huffily in response. She couldn't speak anyway. She felt dizzy and traitorous tears, eyes pricked up. Jesus, it was going through her head. Why? Why did he do this to me? He could have at least warned me that he was leaving me and marrying someone else. And I was a fool to fall for the free food, wasn't I? Why the hell did I bring him here in the first place? Or did she build all this? A monstrous thought suddenly flashed through her mind. Maria looked carefully at Nastya and noticed in her eyes some frantic lights and malicious hatred. She shifted her gaze to William. He looked like a guilty spaniel who had been caught in the act by his mistress and tried to say something. But the torrents of words glistening from his young wife left no chance for that. Well, Maria scraped up inside herself the last moral strength and smiled radiantly. "I congratulate you from the bottom of my heart. I see that you, William, have found the perfect wife. I sincerely believe that your married life will be long and happy. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go out. I'll see you later." She resolutely turned and, proudly raising her head, went from this theater of the absurd away restless. Nancy, everyone was yelling after her, but she wasn't listening. She wandered as if to the nearest toilet room, and without strength went straight to the floor of its motives, and in her eyes was going on. "Probably this stuffiness," thought Maria. "It is necessary to get up, or someone will come in now." Suddenly, Nancy, the thought gave her strength. She stood up awkwardly, sliding her hand, while painfully trying to find her footing. And she immediately vomited into the sink. It felt better after that, but she was still dizzy in dots. The flickering in front of her eyes, Maria Little erased the output disc, fortunately turned out to be in her purse. She even washed her head a little with cold water and went downstairs. I sank down on a bench behind the far column so as not to run into the exiting newlyweds and ordered a cab. The car arrived in 6 minutes, and Maria was safely home. Flopped down on the bed, she forgot herself, interspersing nightmares with sleep. She woke up several times from what she felt again. She felt sick all over again. She felt so bad it seemed like she was about to give up on life. Finally, towards morning, she felt better. or the pension had taken effect, but the nausea receded and Maria was able to sleep well. All the next day she spent, not leaving the apartment, lying in bed, almost nothing to eat, roared like a cow and stupidly poured into the TV. She wanted to call Kelly to complain about her miserable life, but she didn't even want to touch the phone that had been turned off yesterday. It just didn't make sense to her. How could anyone do such a despicable thing? All right, it's Duchy Nancy. She was understandable. But William, how could he in a month and a half not only think of marrying someone else, but already organize everything? Although, of course, Nastenka is clearly responsible for organizing everything in this family, and she will not miss her own. There's no doubt about it. But the most disgusting is how one acted towards her. Did she not deserve even a simple message about the upcoming wedding? It's understandable that he didn't want a scene of scandal on her part and so on, but at least messages could be sent like, "Sorry, but I've changed my mind and I'll marry someone else," or something like that. At least she was aware of such things and would not allow to make a fool of herself. Although that's probably what Nancy was counting on. Yeah, that was probably it. Maria shuddered as she remembered that trademark doll of ours with the animal grin and the predatory fire in Cute's blue eyes. What else did she have in store for her? What surprise? Had that latitude come up again? What on earth is it? Nervous or something? Never had digestive problems. Maria thought she should probably see a doctor. After all, there's a long trip coming up, a flight. She doesn't need that kind of trouble. In Italy. Come in. The office door opened, and Maria took a deep breath and went inside. What are you complaining about? The gastroenterologist, without taking his eyes off the monitor screen, asked a routine question. Maria described her symptoms. Let's take a look at you. He finally broke away from the computer and turned his attention to the patient. Any previous episodes? No, we need to draw blood. And then you can't rule out natural causes. I don't understand, Maria asked. The usual ones that happen to women of childbearing age, smiled the doctor. You mean? No, Maria said with conviction. No, it can't be. But you know best. And still go and give blood now. If on an empty stomach, room 102, you can come back later with the results. She went and gave blood, and after sitting in the office, began to calculate, confusing the dates and days of her female terms. It came out that she was 2.5 weeks late. But no, she's using protection. That can't be right. Should I go buy a test? No, I don't think so. And when the blood test came back a few days later, and Maria stupidly watched as the doctor, pointing his finger at the incomprehensible numbers, symbols in the line of values, smiles, and congratulates her. The real meaning of these simple words did not immediately reach her. You are definitely pregnant. Congratulations. Pregnant. Congratulations. Congratulations, pregnant. It echoed in my head. The walls bowed, the ceiling dropped, and everything went swimmingly. Wake up. Maria Igorevna, wake up. How do you feel? I don't know. Maria looked at the doctor, and her mind was a fog, a complete uncertainty. Do you need to be hospitalized? Your first semester pregnancy is difficult. I'll write you a referral. We can call an ambulance right here. Do you have someone to escort you? No. Then I strongly recommend hospitalization. An ambulance? No. Thanks. I'll go. I'm feeling better. Maria lied and grabbed her purse and crawled out of the office. She wasn't better. It was worse than worse. She was disgusted. That's how it was. And not so much from nausea and fainting, but from the realization of how monstrously screwed up I was. What do I do? What to do? Maria agonized and couldn't come up with any reasonable solution to share her burden with anyone. She called Kelly. They talked for almost an hour, and she was relieved. But there was still a lot to think about. Good afternoon. I have a 3 p.m. appointment. She opened the door of the gynecologist's office and saw the doctor himself and a middle-aged woman sitting with her back to her. The middle-aged woman came out sobbing and wiped her eyes with the back of her palm. "Wait, please be kind." And the doctor pointed her eyes at the seated patient. Of course, Maria stepped back into the corridor and almost bumped into Antonia, who was approaching the same door. "You didn't say that," she wondered. "Good afternoon. What are you here?" she glared out, realizing that she had inadvertently said something stupid and almost intruded into someone else's private life. "I'm sorry," I just whispered. She stepped aside. She felt dizzy again and sank into the chair in front of the office, and the preoccupied man made his way into the office without even answering her anything. It was as if they didn't even know each other. "What is going on here in general?" Maria thought wistfully. "What is happening to my life? Why is everything so confused?" She covered her face with her palms and sat so desperately, trying to figure out what to do to make everything as before, simple and clear. But nothing concrete came to mind, except for the one thing she'd actually come here for. "Come in." The door opened. The very same woman who had been crying came out of the office. Antonio held her hand, and as he passed by, he nodded slightly to Maria. She looked after him, shrugged her shoulders, and entered the vacated office, so resolutely, as if diving into an icy ice hole. "You do realize that this decision of yours will have irreversible consequences and may have a detrimental effect on your health." "Which time?" asked the female gynecologist. "Yes, I understand." Maria jerked his chin resolutely. "But I have no other way. There is always another way." The doctor looked at her with a defeated look. "For example, adoption of your child by childless couples. You have no idea how many women and men also suffer from not being able to have children of their own. How happy would they be to be in your shoes right now? Yes, just take the couple you just saw. That's doctor-patient confidentiality. Of course, but you don't know these people. I'm not telling you their names or identities. They've been trying unsuccessfully to get pregnant for 15 years. They've suffered terrible losses over and over again, and no amount of money in the world can help them. You see, I understand," Maria said tiredly, "but I can't change my mind. Put me down for Tuesday." "All right, since you've already decided everything, come to the appointed time." On the 17th, Tuesday, Saturday, she received a call from Antonio, summoning her to a meeting. This time he received her in his office, a luxurious one, filled with all sorts of charming little things, hung with countless diplomas and awards testifying to his professional achievements. "Hello, Maria." He looked tired and frustrated, but still smiled at her. "I'm sorry. I was tied up in unpleasant circumstances the last time we met. I didn't expect to see any of my friends or colleagues that day." "Neither did I," Maria confessed, and remained silent, waiting to see what he would say next. She had the wit and tact not to discuss the details of the recent unexpected meeting in the office of Genevieve. "Well, today I invited you to provide you with the documents necessary for your internship and a final farewell, so to speak. Here, take everything you'll need in Milan. Letters of recommendation, your service record. Here is your passport. Italian visa. This is a letter to an old acquaintance of mine. She keeps a lovely little hotel. I've arranged a room with her. For you, of course. The bills will be paid by the company." "But what is the matter with you, Cindy Maria?" suddenly Antonio exclaimed, seeing how pale she was. Maria suddenly collapsed on her side and began to slip from the chair on which she was sitting. She woke up only in the hospital room, where she was brought by ambulance. A concerned Antonio was sitting in the chair next to her. "Why didn't you tell us about your situation, Maria?" He rebuked her in a fatherly manner. "I didn't do it on purpose. Don't worry, please." Maria tried to molest, but again felt dizzy, and with 100 meters sank back on the pillow. "This will soon cease to be a problem. I promise I won't let you down." "What are you talking about?" Antonio was astonished. "What do you mean?" "I got rid of it next week." From this, Maria painfully chose words. "From this unpleasant circumstance that thanked with anger Antonio. How dare you? How dare you even utter such words? All you have to think about right now, It's your future child. Everything else can wait. The excitement is fierce. He even switched to you, though he was always impeccably courteous. But with tears in her eyes, she tried to object. But the internship is culinary school. What the hell internship? Antonio finally lost his temper and added some colorful Italian swear words. Do you realize how lucky you are? Stupid girl. My Bianchi and I have been agonizing for 15 years, trying to have a child for 15 years. You realize that about you. God gave you such a miracle. And you dare to willingly give it up and destroy a living creature, a living soul. There is no limit to human stupidity and cruelty. He threw his hands up, put his head around his head, and ran back and forth across the room. How? How can you say that? Maria looked at him in fear and bewilderment. Raiders. Antonio sat down to her again. Tell me, Maria, why do you refuse the little angel? His father left me. He married another. That's all. Antonio smiled sarcastically. Is that a reason to ruin your child? How are you still young and stupid? Listen, he said suddenly. We can do this. On Tuesday, Maria didn't show up at the doctor's office by the appointed time. Antonio convinced her not to terminate the pregnancy. He suggested she give the child to his family to raise. Bianchi and I will be very happy, he exclaimed, and it would be the best decision for you. Think about it, please. I beg you. Think it over. We'll postpone the internship. You'll give birth with all the necessary paperwork. We will. We'll take the baby and you'll never see him again. And my wife and I will make sure he's not born to a homeless, drug-addicted woman, and his health will be fine. That's what they did. Maria, who spent the entire first 3 months tormented by a terrible cab, Koza paid for a stay at the best clinic. It was a fabulous resort, if it wasn't for the constant nausea. Then when the cab cost passed, my legs started ticking. Doctors put the threat of miscarriage, and as a result, she spent all those long months before delivery in a specialized facility where they and the future child was taken care of. The very best specialists. During that time, she became very close with Antonio as well, who visited her every week, and with Bianchi and his wife. Once a very beautiful but early-aged woman. Now, however, a new hope adorned her still face with delicate colors, and she was all change. They spent long hours together, walking through the beautiful park and clinic, talking, telling each other about their lives and discussing the details of their upcoming adoption. You could tell they had become good buddies, if not even friends. These not young, very wealthy, and as it turned out, very kind-hearted people replaced Maria for many months from her family and relatives. To her mother and father, she did not make anything of her situation. They did not suspect anything. She only said that the internship was postponed for reasons beyond her control. She would go later. That's all. 9 months appointed by nature for the formation and birth of a new life stretched for Masha, accustomed to an active existence for a very long time. But all things must come to an end. Her pregnancy ended too, and one long winter night in the late southern blizzard of February, she gave birth to a strong and healthy baby boy. A young nurse, assisting a skilled birth attendant in the delivery, handed her the newborn, but Maria, covering her face with the palm of her hand. She didn't even want to look at the baby. Suddenly, she felt that it would be even harder to part with him. The morning the happy parents took their son, and their lawyer brought Maria to sign all the official papers. So the child of failed parents William and Maria became Italian for Antonio de Volodin, younger, the only and desired son of his adoptive parents, millionaires. Antonio's heir, a world-famous chef and potential successor to his father's culinary and restaurant empire. Quite a few years have passed since then, and one day on the distant French Riviera, the annual festival of haute French cuisine took place. As usual, its participants were several dozen recognized masters of culinary art, as well as hundreds of novice chefs, eager to join the ranks of gurus of delicious and healthy food. Among other contestants was the talented Italian chef Antonio, whose youngest only son and heir to his famous father's skill and talent. The culinary maestro himself is already a profound old man, no longer took part in the fate of the Bavarian fights, quietly lived out his days on the island of Capri, on their magnificent family villa, surrounded by thickets of tangerines and trees and olive crunch. Please take your registration number. An employee of the competition organization gave young Antonio and walked to table 9. The duel of Bavarian art lasted for 3 whole days. During this time, each of the contestants had to prepare 3 different dishes according to their original recipe: a meal, an appetizer or salad, and a dessert. A strict jury consisting of 20 famous master culinary artists tasted the dishes and chose the best of the best. Well, of course, sit in between and a kid from Holland to another participant. You'll see, Antonio's son will get the Grand Prix. Guys like him always have it all together. At the end of the 3rd day of the competition, the grand jury announced the winners. First place went to a representative of Ireland. Second place went to a girl from Canada. And the third received the same Dutch, who complained to a friend about the injustice and nepotism of the members of the Judicial Council. However, Antonio was not forgotten either. After the closing of the tournament, one of the masters came up to him sitting on the spectator stand and said, "Antonio, my friend, don't be sad. You are still young and will catch your dacha by the tail. At one time I knew your famous father closely. You have talent and vivacity and great ability. Your shrimp soup and spicy appetizer were great. Believe me, old man, you lack only one thing." Antonio raised his brown eyes to the master. "Mastery in the art of dessert making. If this cake had been as good as the 2 previous dishes, you would have won your first award." "Yes," agreed Antonio. "I myself know that desserts are not my forte." "Higher," but his son patted him on the shoulder. "Honored chef, I'll give you a hint. They'll teach you a few things, and soon you'll be a first-class pastry chef." "That's right," the boy shone. "Thank you, maestro." A few days later, young Antonio drove in his sporty Maserati along the picturesque roads of the French province of Languedoc. His way lay almost to the very sea-coast, to the small hotel Nest of the Lark, located in a tiny place a difficult-to-pronounce name not far from Montpellier. "Good day," he greeted the girl who came out to him at the ringing of a private bell. "I hear they make the most delicious desserts here, this side of the Mediterranean." "Maybe," the girl smiled. "Maybe you're not wrong. May I speak to Madame Maria?" asked Antonio, taking his valise out of the car. "Mom is busy now," said the girl. "She will come to you later. In the meantime, please tune in. Do you want just dinner or a room?" "Yes, I would like to stay with you for a while," Antonio replied. "Okay," nodded the girl. "I'll see what's free right now. Come with me." Soon Antonio was ensconced in a charming room with a private bath and a large antique fireplace. From the window of his bedroom, he had a view of the endless mustard and fields, where a light breeze, playing her, laughing, stirred the yellow inflorescence, and it seemed as if it were the golden ocean of an unknown planet shimmering its glittering waves. In the evening, 7 innkeepers served an outside, simple but impeccably prepared dinner. "We don't have menu choices on regular days," the girl said, smiling. "Only on Wednesdays and Fridays. But at any time you can order one of several dozen very special desserts, the recipes of which are kept in the strictest confidence." That's how Antonio found himself frustrated. "But where is your mother? I have a letter for her." "She'll come out to see you later," repeated the girl and disappeared into the house. Antonio was left alone at a small table standing in the shade of a flowering mental tree. He twirled his coffee cup thoughtfully in his hands and scrutinized the dessert chart. Their names shocked him. He had never even heard of such sweet dishes before, though he had trained in culinary arts in Paris and Milan, and a long apprenticeship before his father let him work. Family restaurant chain, necklace of homeland, Margarita's dreams, flying with speed. He read the enchanting title, and it was as if he could smell them. Picked something. Suddenly a low, well-pitched female voice sounded behind him. "No, He turned around and saw a pleasant, leathery woman with lively brown eyes and lush kashtan, new hair, put in a complex, elegant hairstyle. "Help me with my choice, madame." He looked questioningly at the lady Madame Maria. "That's right. I am Maria, the owner of this small family-run establishment," said the woman with dignity. "May I ask who you are now?" "A young man." "And why?" "They asked for me." "Antonio." He stood up and bowed slightly to her. "At your service." Hearing his name, the woman turned pale and clung to the back of her chair. Sighing heavily, she brought her hand to her chest. "What is it, madam? Is Antonio worried? Are you not well?" No, just a slight attack of weakness," replied the landlady. "I've been a little unwell the last few days, so I don't go out much." "But you didn't say. What brought you here?" "A friend of my father's recommended that I come to you to learn the art of making the finest desserts, this side of the Mediterranean." "That's what he said," the boy smiled. "And here is his letter of recommendation." "I see." The woman lowered herself into a chair. "Would you allow me?" "Oh yes, of course." He too sat down again and watched her read. "Well, I think I can help you with something. A long time ago, your father helped me too. Thank you very much." The young man was sincerely pleased. "When do we start?" "In a couple of days," answered the hostess. "I need some more rest." Before starting your training, a few days passed like a couple of moments in this magical and quiet place. Antonio walked through the fields, watched the sun rise in the morning, and listened to the songs of the field larks. He never wanted to leave. Finally, Mrs. Maria told him that tomorrow they would start school. For 2 whole weeks, she explained and showed him exactly how to prepare desserts, what products were needed for this or that cake or pie. She shared the secrets of her skill. When the term of training came to an end, she and Sylvia, as Maria's daughter was called, arranged a small exam for him, and Antonia successfully passed it. Late in the evening, when the bird trills of Antonia had already subsided, Mrs. Maria and her daughter sat under the mental tree and drank coffee with cream. The coffee had been served by a maid. Antonio's examination of a small cake with the marvelous name Lavender and Dawn. "How is your father doing?" Maria inquired. "Not bad considering his venerable age," replied Antonio. "I spoke to him before he left, and he sends his best regards to you." "That's how. Give him the same from me." Maria smiled. "Yes, he and I have a lot to remember." "I hear your mother has already left this sinful world." "Yes, my mother passed away 2 years ago," the young man said sadly. "No doubt she loved you very much." Maria comforted him. "And she was very proud of you." "Thank you." He smiled sadly. "But let's move on to happier matters. I have the honor to invite you, and you too, dear Sylvia, to visit us at our family estate in Capri." "It's an honor," Maria assured him. "Perhaps when the flow of guests dies down after the high season, we'll take advantage of it. In the meantime, I have a parting gift for you." And she held out to him a small thin box covered with lilac velvet. "Please open it, dessert." Mother's tears. With surprise, Antonio read the name on the sheet that lay in the box. Next was the recipe. "With this dessert, you will surely win first place in the next cooking competition. He's Maria. Just please give it another name more appropriate to your youth." "But why is it called so sadly?" quietly asked Antonio, looking at the innkeeper. "A long time ago, in another distant and cold country, I lost my little son," answered the woman. And there was sadness and grief in her voice. "I suffered a great deal, but nothing could be taken back. And later, when I became famous in my profession, I created this dessert as a memory of my dear child. Only strictly follow its complicated recipe when you cook it well. And don't forget to change the name." "Okay," Antonio promised. "But why are you giving it to me?" "As I said, I owe a lot to your father," answered Maria, and rose from the table. "Goodbye, Mr. Junior. I was very glad to meet you." "Goodbye." Antonio said goodbye to her. Early in the morning, he left this fabulous place and went home. His elderly father asked about this visit and about the owner of the little inn and her daughter for a long time. "Did you like her?" "That girl?" his father asked with a frowning brow. "Yes, of course," nodded Antonio. "But I'm not going to marry her at all." "Father, if you're at it again." "I don't intend to marry at all yet. I need to accomplish something in my craft first." "That's good." Father approves. "Good." Chuckles. "Son." For a whole year, Antonio honed his dessert skills. This and that, practicing, cooking over and over again. Finally, he felt he could succeed and reapplied for the prestigious competition. But just a week before the competition began, old Antonio died suddenly. Just before he died, he called his son, who had been sitting by his bed for the second day, and told his son, "It's time for you to know the whole truth. This woman, Maria, is the landlady of the French inn." Yes, Father Antonio brought closer to better hear the whispers of the dying man. She's your real mother." Barely audible, uttered the old man and lowered his breath. Lost Antonio stood by his dead father's bedside in amazement and longing. That year again, he did not take part in the cooking competition or morning. Then again, he went to a small hotel on the French Mediterranean coast and asked Mrs. where kissed. A few minutes later, Sylvia came out to him in a black mourning dress and told him that her mother had passed away 3 weeks ago. She was already ill. "When you came to visit us last time, the girl wept and knew about it. That's probably why she gave you that prescription. She'd never told anyone in the world before, not even me. Are you jealous?" Did Antonio look her in the eye? "No," Sylvia answered thoughtfully. "I should be. But for some reason, I'm not jealous at all. She knew what she was doing. Your father must have meant a lot to her." "Sylvia, darling, there's something I have to tell you." He touched her hand gently. "My father, before he died, he told me that Mrs. Maria, she was my mother too, that astonished girl. My mother was cheating on my father." "What do you mean?" Antonio interrupted her. "Of course not. She met your father much later. Besides, my father was never her lover. He and my mother adopted me when I was only a few minutes old. My real mother was Mrs. Marie. Her name was Maria then, and she lived in the USA. It's a huge northern country. Our lawyer showed me all the official ones. After my father died." "Yes, I know Mom lived in the USA," Sylvia said thoughtfully. "She told me." But then she looked at Antonio and suddenly smiled brightly and joyfully. "So you are my brother then?" "Yes." He nodded and smiled too. "That's how it turns out. Let's switch to you, if you don't mind." "God, sure." Sylvia put her arms around him and kissed him gently on the cheek. "I can't believe it. Now I have a big brother. Yes, I've dreamed of that all my life." Antonio stayed at his younger sister's house almost the whole summer. The two of them put their mother's papers in order and tried to find information about Antonio's real father, but there was no mention of him. Archie's family lawyer knew nothing on the subject either, and if he did, he successfully concealed it. In the end, Antonio waved his hand. That was fine. He didn't really want to. He had the best father in the world, who gave him everything he could want. Why rehash the past? The following year, he applied for the cooking competition for the 3rd time. On the first day, he made a great homemade soup that his sister had taught him. On the second day, he made a lo and behold seafood salad, the family's signature recipe. But the real furor at the festival produced a completely original dessert, which young Antonio Guerra created on the 3rd day of this competition. It was delicate, not cloying or greasy, almost weightless, crunchy for soup, but not a cake brittle. From 18 thin vid corgives, sent a stunning lemon cream decorated with tea rose petals, slavs, white, sugar drops. The strict competition committee could not remember a time when all its respected members unanimously awarded the Grand Prix of the festival to a dessert. Young Antonio Archie named his masterpiece as Mrs. Maria, the owner of a tiny hotel in Languedoc, France, a recognized pastry chef of international repute, and the owner of 3 Michelin stars, asked him to do. Yes, he had changed the name of this magical dessert as he had promised her, but he had changed it by just one word. Antonio named this flawless, exhilarating, touching from the hearts of cake connoisseurs and lovers, my mother's tears.